Welcome to the Greater Culture Podcast, where we have conversations about how to elevate the quality of life through movement, nutrition, recovery, and mindset practices. And welcome to another episode of the Greater Culture Podcast with your host, Brad Marshall. And today, excited to be joined by a local friend and business owner, Aliya Gard, owner of Gard Wellness Center. Excited to jump into some topics, hear her story and what she's come to understand as a fitness and health professional. So Aliya, thanks so much for spending some time with me on the podcast today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm glad that our paths have connected via a friend, a member at our gym who works for you and got us connected. And we got a chance to meet at a Spartan race and then came up and got some care along the way. But I'm always fascinated to hear people's stories of what got them into their line of work. So tell us a little bit about your story and how'd you find your way into health and fitness and getting into chiropractic care?
Yeah. So, health and fitness kind of started for me. Well, I grew up as a ballet dancer and then I hated it. It was too much pressure. So I ditched it. And I was probably like 16. And then from 16 to 25, I decided that I was not interested in anything healthy. And I went down a different road. Thankfully, I came back to my roots. And after undergrad, I wound up in an insurance company. And I was in corporate America and I kind of thought I was cool. You know, I had no idea what the heck I wanted to do when I grew up, but I don't know. They told me that they were hiring trainees and they told us how much money you could make. And I was like, all right, cool. I'll try it out. So I worked for that company for 5 years and, it became more and more stressful with more and more money. And I turned to yoga to kind of de-stress. I was like, oh, people say yoga's like relaxing. I should probably try that. So I went to yoga and I attribute my yoga practice to kind of my own awakening because I realized as I started to pay more attention to my surroundings in a different, more attuned way, I realized that everybody kind of hated their jobs and nobody was really happy and their conversations were super uninspiring to me. And so I decided I was going to do a hard pivot and I quit and I cashed in my 401k and I went to train to be a yoga teacher. So I moved out to LA for a couple months and I trained that. And I don't want to take up the whole time with my backstory. So I'm going to really fast track this. So yoga teaching, a couple years, was living in Portland, Maine, also kind of got bored and felt like there was something more. So I was going to travel around the world. So saved up a bunch of money. I'm going to travel around the world by myself because I loved traveling. And that's when I really feel like you push your comfort zone and you can grow a little bit more. So in the course of saving money to go on this trip, I hurt my back. And one of my students was a chiropractor. And so she said, I can help. I was like, well, I don't even know what chiropractic is, but sure, whatever. I trust you. You're really nice. So I went to her office and she took x-rays and she explained how chiropractic works and that it wasn't just the back pain that I was having. It was how my entire system was operating and that the areas that she could actually show me on an x-ray were interfering with the way that my brain was communicating with my whole body. And it just made sense. It was so obvious. And I literally left that visit. My sister was in the car. I got in the car and I was like, I know what I want to be when I grow up. And she said, what? I was like, I'm going to be a chiropractor. And so through the course of my treatment with this doctor, I had great results. And then of course, picked everybody's brain that I knew that had had any experience with chiropractic, and kept hearing positive affirmations. So anyway, I took my 1 year around the world trip and I shortened it to 3 months and I went to chiropractic school and here I am.
One of the things I love is continuing to search and figure out what do I want to do? All right, this is helpful. It's paying the bills. It's not necessarily fulfilling me as much. And you strike me as somebody who's a little bit more introspective, especially getting into yoga gives you some of that time and that space to kind of process and think what do I actually want to do? Do you find yourself that you were always kind of an introspective type of person, even through ballet and the corporate America? Or did yoga give you finally some time to sit and be with yourself for a little bit?
I think it gave me time. I honestly, introspective now, but super erratic many times too. Like, oh, that sounds interesting. Let's try that. Oh, I don't like that. So I guess my mom would probably say I'm impulsive. So I'm never afraid to like take a leap or try something new. And I think because I didn't ever really have any direction of what I wanted to do, like some people know their whole lives, they want to be XYZ. I never had that knowing, but I never had any fear about trying new things. So I just, through the process of elimination, kind of figured things out. There were a couple other professions along the way that supplemented my post corporate experience that I also didn't like. So introspective now and more attuned with what vibes feel good now, but not always that way. It was kind of like a dartboard.
Yeah. I love that analogy. And it's interesting you mentioned that idea of not being risk averse, because you're like, you know what? Yoga teacher, let's do it. Trip around the world, let's do it. Chiropractor, let's do it. So is that something that has always kind of been innate in you as somebody who loves to push the boundaries or just like make a decision and charge forward with it with full confidence?
1000%. And I think that things that might not work out do work out because, and anybody can do it. You just have full belief in the fact that you're going to be able to do the thing, and then you can do the thing, except bar muscle ups. I have not been able to do the thing consistently.
There's always a movement or two when it comes to CrossFit that just seems to trip us up a little bit. So you mentioned that there was the dark years, if you will, of not necessarily focusing on health and fitness as much or taking care of yourself. What was life like for you in that time period? Because you said ballet dancer and, you know, focusing on being good at that. And then you settled into this lifestyle of corporate America, which I think a lot of folks can relate to is, you know, you're active, you do a sport or you do something that keeps you moving. And then eventually, like, you finish school, you go get the job, and next thing you know, you're working at a desk 9 to 5, and you're like, that's just life now. So tell us a little bit about what was that experience like for you?
Sorry, I missed the first part because my son just walked in. Do you mean the split from corporate America to chiropractic?
I was going to say, tell us a little bit about the corporate America experience, because I think a lot of people can relate to that of like, yeah, I'm just not as healthy or not moving nearly as much as maybe I'd like to or I'd want to.
Yeah. It was super sedentary. This was kind of before the accessibility of sit-stand stations or community work areas. It was cubicle based. The reward was always crap food. You know, your manager would bring in a plate of donuts, and because they wanted you to stay late, they'd bring pizza at 5:30. And it was just a really unhealthy, toxic environment for me at that place on many levels. But what was really sad is that, and I'm blessed that this did not happen to me, but a lot of coworkers kind of, you fall into the spending trap where you spend too much so that you have to stay in that place, and then you're trapped. And so that was really tragic. And I feel like, you know, it's really nice to make money. You can get a nicer car, and you can get yourself into a payment cycle very easily. And I feel like that happened more there. And that had to be why people stayed. I don't know. It didn't feel great. And I didn't really care about what I was doing. I was supporting short-term disability insurance claims. And so, you know, everything happens for a reason. I did learn, I worked pregnancy and low back cases. So I work with pregnant women now, and I deal with a lot of low back. So, you know, in retrospect, you can see how all the chips fall where they do. But overall, it was not an environment that fostered growth. The workloads were unrealistic. And I just didn't really fit in that sphere very well.
Yeah, I get the sense that, you know, when you mentioned that idea of gratification, a lot of folks look to some of that external stuff of like, well, if I can just get the bonus that allows me to buy the car or the house or take the trip or do the thing, like then I'm going to be satisfied and I'll be happy. And you can very quickly get into that rat race and it's stuck on the wheel. And then it sounds like when you had the opportunity to find yoga and kind of, all right, let's see what else there is or what other ways I can find gratification. And maybe it's the personal growth and development and who I am as a person, that's where sounds like a light bulb kind of clicked for you of like, oh, this is a different experience. Talk to us a little bit about what happened when you went to yoga and all of a sudden you're like, wow, like life can be different.
Yeah, I think I was kind of going through my workday with blinders on a little bit. You've got 12 hours of work to do that you're going to try to do in 8 hours. And so there's not really a whole lot of time to pay attention, and be aware of your surroundings, or even be aware of a vibe in an office, right? You just kind of put your head down and you do the work. Yoga created that space for that stillness so that I could even, I think it first started with being aware of what stillness felt like and how good that felt. And then realizing at that point, I had a frame of reference. I had another way of being that was totally contrary to what I was experiencing in my, 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. life. And I just really, as time went on, I realized more and more that it wasn't a good fit. It was contrary to who I really felt like I was. And honestly, one of the most gratifying moments that I will never forget, it was so formative, when I finally decided that was it. Like, I was done. I went to my director, and I had told my manager, and the director pulled me in and he said, what do you need? What do you need to stay? And I said, there's really no number. Like, it's okay. This is just not for me. And that was kind of, how old was I at the time? I was 27. And I realized that there's no amount of money that can trump that feeling of connectedness. And thankfully, I didn't have kids. I was not in a situation where I was stuck. So
Yeah,
I hightailed it out of there.
yeah. What a freeing feeling though, to be like, you know what? I can figure something else out and find a new path, and there's not a number that keeps me in it. And so it sounds like through that journey of almost awakening, if you will, through yoga and figuring out who you are and who you want to be, that there was a desire to coach or to instruct or lead yoga, then to see if you could help others in the same way. Was there always that kind of thought in the back of your head as you began practicing yoga, or was there a certain moment where you're like, you know what, like I have experienced such a great benefit from this that like I would love to impact other people in the way that I've been impacted?
I would love to say yes, but the honest answer is no. I have historically always been the one that was like, nah, I can't teach that. Like, I'm going to do it. It's great for me, but no, I'm not going to teach that. It was my instructor who convinced me to go. So, and then I came back and worked in her studio. So I really, props to Angie and Mike for kicking me out the door and sending me, because I don't know that I would have initiated that myself. I would have figured something else out and just practiced a lot.
Yeah. Did it give you a different perspective on yoga, being in the teacher position versus the student?
For sure. Just watching people work through resistance. I knew what my own resistance was, but being able to see that play out physically and emotionally on the mat for people. And it's kind of a different beast what I taught. It's called Bikram yoga. It's kind of fallen out of graces now, but hot yoga, like 105-degree room, 50% humidity. Like, you press up against yourself in that room.
Yeah, you create the scene that allows people then to see, what am I capable of? What can I give in this moment? And there's also that moment of surrender too, of like, do I have to keep fighting or resisting, or can I just allow it to be? And when you see that happen, it's like, whoa, it can be really fulfilling, I think, for as a teacher or as an instructor.
Yeah. And it happens in silence. Like, you can see the transformation happen without a conversation that tells you it happened. I think that was really a powerful thing to witness in people.
I'm starting to see some of the threads that connect, the story together of helping people with insurance claims and not necessarily feeling as fulfilled, seeing and helping people through the mat with yoga, and then getting the help you needed with the chiropractic care that led to then going to study chiropractic care. So tell us a little bit about that experience then, because now you're starting to like put these pieces together of like, man, helping people, I really enjoy it. And maybe this is an avenue I can excel in and make a living out of. What was it like then to make the decision at that stage to say, I'm going to go back and study chiropractic care and learn what I can so I can do the work?
Yeah, it was I think another one of those, like, that makes total sense. I want to do that. Where am I going to go to school? And so it was, I'm not really a forward thinker sometimes. I am, but I'm not. It's again, that kind of impulsive, like right after that visit with that, my doctor, it's like, this makes total sense. This is exactly what I want to do. I literally went home that night. I found a school, shortened trip, and was gone. And then for the next 4 years, I was on a trimester program, and there were like probably 25 to 28 credit hours a trimester. So you just there's a lot of credit hours, and you just kind of put your nose down and did it. So while I, again, would love to say that I was anxiously awaiting helping the masses in school, I was really just getting through and preparing for boards, and very much a full-time student. But afterwards, I met my husband in chiropractic school, and I think we both knew not only did we want to help people, but we also wanted to be our own bosses and entrepreneurs. We had no idea what it took. We were really kind of idiots back then, but we knew we wanted to do it on our own. So that's what we did. And then, fast forward to here we are now, focusing on helping people because we have the degree and we know what we're doing on the business side. So then your focus can really truly be care and the patient and the quality of services they receive from the minute they walk in the front door, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say that you were just in it for those, 3-4 years, were you getting pretty excited about the content that you were learning, and you're like, oh, like this is pretty cool stuff, and it's in alignment with what I was hoping to learn and what I'm excited to take to others? Or was it more like, I've just got to get over this hurdle, learn the next chapter, take the next exam? Like, what was that process like? 'Cause I always think it's fascinating, when you start studying things that you're passionate about, you're like, how do I learn more?
Yeah.
And when you get to decide to do it at that stage of life, it's kind of like, oh, like I'm really excited about this.
That's a great question. So some yes and some no.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately they're teaching to the boards. So they're probably half of what I learned was learning when not to adjust and when you have to refer somebody out. So yes, we needed to know them, but it wasn't like I wasn't overly passionate. I wasn't studying it any more than I had to pass the board tests. Right. But the pediatric classes were exciting to me. The neurology was exciting to me. There were about 50% of the content was like, this is incredible. The body is amazing. Like, let's do this. The other half was, I don't understand biochemistry. Can someone please explain this to me?
It's always fun when you come up against those subjects where you're like, I know it works for some reason. Don't quote me on it, but I just know it works. All right. So just trust me.
And I'm a horrible memorizer. So that really was a disadvantage to me in a lot of classes, but I made it through.
Yeah. As you were going through, did it confirm the ideas or perspectives you had about chiropractic care, or did it change what you thought chiropractors are about, or what they do, or how they operate?
That is such a good question. And you're not a chiropractor. So I'm super impressed that you asked that. So the chiropractor that turned me into a chiropractor was a very principled chiropractor. And how do I easily explain this? So there's kind of two schools of thought, really. There's a school of thought that the body is mechanistic, which it is, right? And that chiropractors should adjust for low back pain and neck pain and keep it at that it's really structural. We're moving an SI joint, we're working a muscle, and that's the end of it. The chiropractic history that inspired the chiropractor that inspired me is fascinating. The chiropractors came up in like 1895 was the first one. And when they came into being, medicine was bloodletting and just doing these crazy things to people, and chiropractors were getting people better with adjustments. And so the profession, I mean, there were old school chiropractors who built landing pads for planes and would have hotels and would have these adjusting clinics that would treat 2,000 people a day. And they would make, what we would say now is outrageous claims. Like, we're going to cure your diabetes. We're going to cure this. We're going to cure that with these adjustments. And while we can't say that, I have seen in practice for years, just amazing things that can't be explained with research. And so I believe that part of what the adjustment does is, it, in the same way of what yoga does, it reconnects you to yourself. There's an upper cervical adjustment that can happen. It's right at the brainstem, and it is, anatomy tells us this, it's a neurological reset. And so when we can have that, it takes us out of the sympathetic nervous system and puts us into the parasympathetics. And in that quick, pause, it's a reset. So, while we can't go out and claim that we're treating people with anxiety or anything else, we're literally finding the area of stress in your spine and adjusting that. That's what we're doing. But we see things that people call chiropractic miracles, like anxiety improves, digestion improves, sleep improves. All of these things happen, and it happens because you correct alignment so that your brain can do its job without interference. So that was a very long answer to your very good short question. But back to school, that part of chiropractic was not taught. So it was very much treating to the boards. Very little of our history was discussed because the school that I went to was kind of trying to distance from that to be more medically integrated. There's a lot of politics involved where a lot of them want prescription rights and want to fit in that bucket. And in my opinion, we just get lost in the MD, DC, DO, whatever, where's my pill kind of bucket. And I don't want to be in that bucket because I think chiropractic is so much more.
I think that's really fascinating. I haven't heard it described like that, which it gives me a better frame of reference because, one of the things I always appreciate asking professionals is how would you explain your line of work to somebody who isn't aware? Because I think the general consensus around chiropractic care is I go in, I get adjusted, I walk out, and hopefully I feel better instantly. Mm-hmm. Neck pain, headaches, back pain, whatever it might be. And then you go work with some chiropractors, and now they're doing some more soft tissue work. Maybe they're even dabbling with dry needling and things like that with some that type of therapy. And I think that level that you're speaking to is really interesting as well, because with how complex the body is, there's things that are happening that you're just we haven't figured it out. We can't explain it yet, but we're seeing what's happening. And so there's this art versus science kind of dichotomy that's hard to express. But as a patient, when you experience it, you're I don't care. I just want to feel better. And this is helping me do that. And it sounds like that's kind of what you've seen, in school, but then out of school, you're oh, there's a lot of stuff that, yes, it's proving what they taught me, but I'm learning so much more that nobody taught me.
Yeah. You kind of, school gives you the license to practice, and then you have to go find your seminars. I did a whole additional certification to work with kids and pregnant women. And you really just have to find adjusting seminars that work with you. And we have all those things. We have soft tissue modalities and therapists and laser therapy, because let's face it, tendonitis is horrible. And if you have a tool that can fix it, all the upper cervical adjusting in the world isn't going to fix your tendinopathy. It's going to help, but there are other tools too. So we try to incorporate all of it, but we recognize that the chiropractic adjustment has to stay true, and we don't want to become, we don't want the chiropractors to do anything more than adjust. We've got therapists to do the rest.
Yeah. And so when you left school, you mentioned that you and your husband figured out pretty quickly that we wanted to create this ourselves and be entrepreneurs. What were those, formative years fresh out of school, trying to figure it out? Did you start a practice right away, or did that take time of working for a clinic or somewhere else, understanding, getting hours in, and then starting your own adventure?
Yeah, great question. So we were too dumb to fail. And so we this was 2010. So the banks had just crashed, but we still had a fancy business plan and put on our nice clothes. At this point we had Pearson was 6 months old. Went to all the banks with our fancy plan and got a lot of no's. And so got all no's. And ultimately, through a strange course of events, we wound up taking over the practice of a doc in what was, well, now it's Barnes and Noble. It was Gold's Gym on Kildare Farm Road. And so he had an office it was literally a closet between the men's and the ladies' locker room. So that was funny. People would like come in. Oh, wait, I was looking for the bathroom. Like, of course you were. So we took over that room, and we had no idea what we were doing. Honestly, we had our business class in chiropractic school was to make a brochure for your business. So, you're a business owner, like that's zero value. We didn't know how to market. We didn't know how to do anything. So we struggled for about six months in that space. Thankfully, we had some medical review file jobs that we did for a company out of California. So even if like nobody came into that little closet, we were still making money. We could support our son. But then I got pregnant again. And after our second son was born, we each got emails that said, hey, whatever you have in your inbox is done. So we kind of thought, oh, shit. We have to figure out how to really do this, not just like sit in this room and do other things. So we had to hire a consultant. We joined a management group, kind of learned their processes, learned how to take statistics, learned how to market, learned how to do all of the business things that you don't learn when you go to school. And so from 2012, we really started building the business. And the first probably 3 years were a full struggle, full disclosure. It was really tough. And I vividly remember our receptionist getting approved for a mortgage and we couldn't. It's like, that's okay. I can see where this is going. It's going to be okay. So yeah, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Honestly, I think the struggle makes you stronger, and being broke gives you really good perspective, which I am truly thankful for. I don't want to go back there, but I'm truly thankful for it. So then it grew from there, and we moved a couple locations, and now we're in our current space now.
Was it always Gard Wellness from the get-go, or had the brand and whatnot changed over time?
We called it Gard Chiropractic and Acupuncture when we first started. And then we really just thought that it was somewhat limiting. It limited what we could offer under that umbrella. And our tag has always been all the things to get you well without drugs or surgery. So it just made sense to name it a wellness center. So we kind of rebranded. I forget when, honestly, maybe like 2016 or something. I'd have to look back at our DBA paperwork, but it's been a while. It's Gard Wellness Center.
Yeah. And in those first couple of years, because you mentioned, learning on the fly and trying to understand and get a grasp on all these different concepts, and reaching out to somebody is always a good strategy. And so even with working with somebody, it sounds like there were still challenges. Like it wasn't like it just like the light bulb clicked and all of a sudden things turned around for those first 3 or 4 years. So what were some of the insights you learned in those early years that have either guided or kind of reinforced the way you operate now, as a small business?
Great question. Company culture is important. We didn't do a good job for years with that. So is sales. So is following the guidance of people that you feel aligned with. We worked with a lot of coaches who had practices that just didn't feel right for us. But when you don't have anything else, you go with it and you try it on. So I think just being really connected with what feels congruent for you has always been, that's our thing. I got to sleep at night. We're not doing shady. We don't dance we'll dance in the gray a little bit, but we're not going in the red. And, what else? Company culture, marketing was huge. There's kind of just hang up a shingle, they'll come. Well, they didn't.
Hmm.
They just didn't. So how do you reach people? And of course, then social media isn't what it is now. So it was different. We were going into businesses and doing massage events, and um, another guiding principle has been take leaps, right? Just take the leap and you'll figure it out as long as you're doing the thing. Um, Financial leaps, hiring people before you think you can afford to. It's like having a kid. You're never going to have enough money to have a kid. Same as with employees. Like put things in place so they'll pay for themselves in a couple months, but playing safe makes you grow slower.
I love those concepts. The one, culture, and establishing that is really important because that's going to be what people know you for, and that's going to help grow the business. Figuring out marketing and sales are critically important. And then once again, that theme of like taking the leap, jumping maybe even a little bit before you're ready to, is so important. What were the things that kept you committed and dedicated during those years? Because I think a lot of folks, when they hear 3 or 4 years of challenges, are like, why didn't you just throw it in and, go do something else? What was it that kind of kept you like either believing or confident that you could figure it out and write the business?
Yeah, confidence in chiropractic. And Lance likes to joke that we were just too dumb to quit, but I think it was a little bit more than that. Each one of us would cycle down at different times, and thank God, with the exception of one time, it was never one of us was up, the other one was down. So we would always pull each other out of hey, one of us has to go get a job. This is ridiculous. There was one time when we both cycled down at the same time, and Lance went and applied for a job selling cars in Durham, and he never got a call. Thank God. So yeah, I don't know. We just kept pushing because I really do believe that people, and we say this to our kids, like you can do anything you put your mind to. You literally can. There are very few things that are not attainable if you keep going. And I think that's where a lot of businesses fail, is that they just didn't push through, or maybe they couldn't. Financial situations are different for people, but I think if you can keep pushing, it usually works out.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges for small businesses or folks in general, is being patient and consistent enough to see the results, whether it's health and fitness, whether it's a job, whether it's relationships. It's like finding the consistency and if you want to call it discipline, to just kind of stay in it. And while this was all going on, curious, like, what was your just overall like health and fitness like? Because I think as small business owners, you get into it because you're like, wow, I had such a meaningful and impactful experience, and now I want to give that to others. And then what ends up happening is small business owners end up neglecting their own health and wellness for the sake of, the business or whatever it is. So during this time, were you still able to get movement in and eat the way you wanted to, and like physically and mentally feel like you wanted to, even if the business maybe wasn't doing what you thought it was?
So I will say that is one thing we really kept in. It just wasn't in a nice CrossFit gym. It was with some barbells up in the closet, or wherever it was, or it was, walks or runs around a lake. We were always active. The food thing, I'm pretty much a clean food eater, so we just wouldn't budge on that. It just looked like a lot of organic rice and beans instead of groceries from Whole Foods. So we didn't. I feel like those core values are so core that they don't change. They just look less fancy, and they can. It doesn't have to be fancy. So those things thankfully stayed in, because another belief that we hold is that how you do anything is how you do everything. And one of our company cultures is that we're going to walk the walk. So it felt incongruent for us to say, you need to get adjusted if you're not getting adjusted, to say, well, this is a great way for you to eat if we're off eating crap. Or, hey, exercise is great, but I haven't worked out in 5 months. So those things always stayed in with us because we felt like it was disingenuine not to.
I love that. And I think there's a key learning point there, is that even if things in life, whether it's work or relationships or other things, maybe aren't going the way we'd like them to, like still sticking to some of the basics of sleep and eat and movement, it is amazing what that can do for your just overall mental and physical well-being, and can get you through some tough times, even just having the consistency there. So I think that's meaningful to hear of, like, you know what, even if life's not going great with my job or this or that, like I still get consistent with the way I eat and move, and like it helps me to like feel good still.
I joke that it's like, it's my Prozac. Like my morning workout is I go in and someone tells me exactly what to do and I love it. And that's it, right? It's just some things you have to make a non-negotiable, because if you don't, you're going to make 1,000 excuses in your head. And then ultimately you're tired and you can't perform.
Absolutely. And now when you walk into Guard Wellness, there's so many opportunities to help people with their physical and even mental health. Talk to us a little bit about what that journey and process was like. So you made it through the challenging years, you figured it out, got your footing, and now when you look at the space and all the different offerings within the building, it's pretty amazing. So talk to us a little bit about the journey of getting to that point of not just adjusting and working with people through chiropractic care, but offering all these other services that can help people to feel and move better.
Yeah. So we're always looking for great things we can bring on to help people without drugs and surgery. That's it. I think we have a massive pharmaceutical problem in this country. There's nowhere I want to live for acute care, for emergency medicine. Like, we're amazing, but for prevention, we're horrible. And so just always keeping our eye out for things that are up and coming that can help keep people off pain pills or out of cortisone shots, or so that's on the physical medicine side. And then on the functional medicine side, right after COVID hit, we kind of had a panic moment and we were like, oh my gosh, they can shut our business down. And so we took everything that we were doing kind of one-on-one with clients and took it all online and built out like a 16-week health reset course. So all of the clean living things, and then used some functional labs. And so we're helping people that way as well. And we are relentless about improvement. That's another one of our company cultures. And we are. And so that means like you're always looking for something else that you can bring on. We brought on an infrared sauna, and like we're just always looking for things that can benefit people. If I had space, we would bring in hyperbaric oxygen, but we're kind of running out of space right now. So we might have to just open a second location for that. But the sky's the limit. If it feels aligned and it brings value, then, and we have the space, we're going to bring it in.
Yeah. And having personal experience up there, it is pretty cool to have so many options available to you, and then have all the different practitioners where if you go in for any challenges or issues or whatever it is, you know, they can figure it out and identify the ways to navigate that. And I love that there's also the both like medical and science background to it as well. Like there's things we know help and certainly work. And then there's like, hey, I also know I'm getting the care from somebody who knows what they're doing and what they're talking about, which is really, really cool as well.
Oh, thanks.
One of the things that I know I'm kind of curious of as well is, so you mentioned like back in the day, marketing and sales was tough. Now, beautiful facility, you know, a lot of folks are coming through. What are some of the things you've either learned or seen that are helping to spread sort of the message or the word around like, hey, we want to help you get out of pain without drugs and without surgery? So is it just word of mouth primarily for you all, or like, what are the ways that you've started to see, like, how do we continue to get people in the door? Because like you said, there's a lot of people suffering out there, but getting them into the door can be the challenge, I feel like, for a lot of small business owners in this space.
For sure. And there's a lot of chiropractors in our alley, or in our arena. We actually opened on Kildare Farm Road, and they used to joke that it was Chiropractor Alley. We're like, oh, whatever, there's somebody for everyone. But we went through about a 4-year period where we didn't do any marketing at all. And I think it was a little bit of PTSD for 3 years from COVID. Like, just hold tight. Don't make any changes. Don't spend any money. just don't mess it up. So that really kind of stopped our kind of entrepreneurial fire to continue to grow. So that was flatlined. We just hired another doc in June, Dr. Evan, and he's great. And so when he came on board, we did start Google advertising. But I will say we're now putting ourselves in front of people who are looking. So keyword search things. We have done kind of Facebook marketing before, but I find that interruption ads like that you're, just scrolling on Instagram or whatever, and something pops up. It's not super effective. It's never effective for me. Actually, I have bought a couple pairs of shoes on Instagram that way. That's different though. I don't generally look for healthcare on Instagram that way, but we are doing Google AdWord ads right now, and it's been pretty good. And people need to know there's alternatives, right? So if someone's searching like medication for back pain, Gard Wellness will pop up, and we're kind of trying to get at it that way. And then of course, word of mouth is awesome.
Yeah. Do you have a typical, some people might use the term avatar or niche where it's like, these are the types of people we typically see who are coming through our doors? Is it kind of the standard, got a lot of back pain or got a lot of like neck pain or something like that? Or what are like your typical clients, or is it kind of across the board?
That's a great question. So Dr. Evan, Dr. Lance, and myself, Dr. Evan and Dr. Lance practice with the same avatar. We have a lot of tech people, so a lot of sedentary neck pain, back pain, headaches. Dr. Lance treats or sees people that are coming in with more like kind of anxiety, things like that too. I treat pediatric and pregnancy. So on the pregnancy side, it's either a breech baby position, or they've already done chiropractic before with another pregnancy, and so they're just looking to stay aligned through pregnancy. And then on the pediatric side, it's, check after birth, and then colic, nursing, digestion, and then developmental kind of neurological stuff, neuroatypical stuff that I work with. So kids don't. I actually do have a couple kids with neck pain right now because they're all with their heads down on those stupid devices. Anyway, we're starting to see more neck pain in kids, which we hate, but we're here for it.
Yeah. I love too that there's, if you want to call it specialties, but there's people who is like, hey, I see a lot of this, so I have a pretty good understanding of what to do or how to go about navigating it. Because I think that's always helpful is you hear the term physical therapist or chiropractor and you think they just treat kind of everything, but realizing that there are some specialties or finding the right person who aligns with either your values or what you're looking for can be really, really helpful. And so what would you say are some of the things that set you apart with Gard Wellness from folks in Chiropractor Row that might be a reason why they would choose to come and visit you all?
Great question. We take x-rays. I think that's huge. I think there's a lot of, the joint, for example, doesn't take x-rays. And we've seen some really crazy things that you wouldn't adjust or you would refer out on an x-ray. So it's very, very important to get that. We can also see signs of stress on the spine. And a lot of times where you hurt is not where the problem is. So we're not really chasing pain. Yes, we want the pain to go away, but we're really looking at the structure and seeing where we can address that as well. We have all the services under one roof, which I love. So it's really kind of a one-stop shop. And then I really think not just the clinical certainty that providers have, but also our staff are freaking rock stars. Like they are so amazing, and customer service is a really high priority for us. It's one of our core values is providing exceptional service. And I feel like you get that at Gard.
Yeah, I know I can certainly speak to that of the ease with which it is to get set up in the system and to schedule things. And it's also really convenient, I think, to not have this long either wait list. If you're like, hey, I'm experiencing something now, I feel like I'd like to get in, you can get in pretty quickly to get some help and assistance, and also feel like that can be a really powerful way for folks to know, hey, regardless of what's coming up in my life, like there's somebody I can turn to, both for maintenance and also for some of those acute challenges that might come up for folks.
For sure. And now we have Friday hours, so even more opportunity.
Yes. I know it's finding as many opportunities as possible for people to come and utilize services, always a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know you're a CrossFitter as well, which is something else, we have in common. So I'm curious, when did you find CrossFit along this health and wellness journey of yogi to then CrossFit, and then what that has looked like now over the years?
Yeah. So my husband got me into it. I was still doing yoga, but the studio I was practicing in, the kids were really little, and the classes are 90 minutes. And by the time you get your sweaty clothes off, get into the car and drive home, it's like I'm out of the house for 3 hours, and it just wasn't feasible. And I would see Lance coming home like just great workout, 1 hour, start to finish. So it was really kind of my efficiency mindset that made me start it. And I'm also, once I tried it, I love a push. I love to push myself. I have a ballet background. We had an absolute slave driver of an instructor. You know, we danced on bloody toes. You did hard things, right? So I personally love that push. And so I totally vibed with the kind of like, I'm going to throw up. I just worked out so hard. Not all the time. That's only happened a couple times. I don't want to scare people from CrossFit. It's amazing. It meets you wherever you are. And if you're a pusher, you can push it. And if you need to scale, you scale. But I loved the efficiency and the completeness of the workouts. And what I also loved is I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to think about what I was doing. And being a boss, like you can appreciate this. You just want to go be told what to do for just an hour. I don't want to make a decision. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And how long would you say you've been doing it now?
So I think I had my first class in I'm so bad with dates, probably like 2016.
Yeah, it's long enough that it's kind of like I don't remember the start time.
Yeah, I dabbled. I think I signed up for like 3 classes a week and I probably went to 2, maybe 1. I dabbled. And then in 2016, we moved to Cary and my husband started working out down the street. And then I joined our gym in Cary in like end of 2016 or early 2017. And I've been 5 days a week, barring any illness. I stopped during COVID. I stopped for 2 weeks during a shoulder surgery, or I stopped. Yeah. So I don't stop unless I have to.
Yeah. What would you say about your just overall general goals then? Have they shifted over those, 7-8 years of doing CrossFit, or has it kind of just been the same? I just want to get a good workout in general health and fitness. And
yeah. So originally, like in 2018, I was an absolute rock star. When I look at Wi-Fi, I'm like, who was that person and what were you doing? Like, how did you do that? And so my weights have like tapered down a little bit. Shoulder surgery certainly put a 1-year pause on that. Now I am less competitive with myself, but I still just want to stay fit. I always say I do CrossFit because I want to lift my grandkids on a backpack up a mountain. And that's the truth. Like, I just do not want to get old and frail.
Yeah. And I think it is such a helpful tool. And I do agree that it can meet you whatever your goals are. So if you are in a stage of life where you're like, I got time and energy, want to be a little bit more competitive, or if you're like, I just want to be able to walk and have less pain when I'm getting up and moving around, like it can meet you at both of those stages.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's helpful for people to understand is it's not just one particular style of fitness or whatnot. So I think that's helpful.
No. And I know your gym is the same, but for us, there's like a wide range of people. There's, a 70-year-old woman, there's like people at all different parts of their fitness journey. And there truly is a place for everybody, which I love because I would not feel comfortable in a super competitive, like, CrossFit Games gym. That's just not who I am. So I'd like to be that, but the reality is I'm not.
I totally agree. And I think that's what's always interesting too is, people will ask like, well, what's your avatar? Like, what's your ideal client? It's like, well, we have such a wide range of them. It's hard to say that this is, there's, trends, but it's like, we're not going to discourage somebody who's outside of that age range or whatnot to coming because we know it's just as helpful for them. So I think it comes down to more of the personality or demeanor, like people who want to work hard, people who want to be coached, people who want to just show up and put in some effort and feel good walking out of the gym. And it's like, if you fit that criteria, like you'll do pretty well with a CrossFit gym.
Yeah, 1000%. I've dabbled in lots of different things for exercise and I'll do CrossFit until I can't walk anymore. For real.
Yeah.
It's
and it
awesome.
gives you the opportunity to go do Spartan races, like, ones that we've done together, which is fun too. So it helps you to say yes to all the fun activities that life gives you.
Absolutely.
One of the questions I love asking folks, and you strike me as somebody who, you mentioned culture being super important to you, but getting a sense and understanding of people's principles or values, things that kind of guide or influence the way they think about situations in life, make decisions. And I would be curious if there's certain principles or values for you personally that have sort of guided or influenced the way that you've made decisions moving from corporate life to yoga life to chiropractic life to, mom and all those things in between. So is there anything that comes to mind for you that you're like, these are kind of like my core values, or these are the things that really help me to be the type of person I want to be?
Yeah. So, grit is a core value for me. Congruency. If I'm going to ask somebody to do something, I better be damn sure I'm doing it myself. Grit, congruency, truth kind of goes along with that. And kindness. I'm a super direct person. So I think I have not always been like soft in delivery of things. So I'm really working on that now to be a little softer. That sounded really bad. I'm not mean at all. I just mean I have a direct way of communicating, which sometimes can be off-putting. So kindness.
There's a couple books and pieces on that idea of radical candor, clear as kind, and sometimes being direct can be misconstrued, but if there's a level of care underneath it, then it's much more well received. So I like that. Grit, congruence, truth, and kindness. So I like that.
Cool.
Well, Aliya, thanks so much for spending some time with me and getting to hear your story and the things that you've come to understand. For folks who are interested in learning more about Gard Wellness, what are the best ways to either reach out or find out what y'all are up to?
GardWellness.com. It's GARD. Instagram at Gard Wellness Center, and Facebook at Gard Wellness Center. And we're on YouTube too. We're on many places, but probably our website is the best place to go.
Yeah, so highly recommend checking them out, especially in the Cary area of North Carolina. If you are looking for someone to help with whatever the health and fitness goals you've got are, or maybe you're experiencing some pain or something like that, great resource. So grateful to have cross paths via some common friends, and grateful for the work and time that I've gotten a chance to spend with you all up there too. So thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.